Alright, I started.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everyday with Zach Jose. I'm your host, Zach Jose, and today I have a special guest, and her name is Natalie Ang. Hey, Natalie, what's up?
Hi, nothing much. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well myself. I've been having a nice, slow day today, and I'm ready to record. So
Alright,
yeah,
sounds good.
yeah. So we're gonna be discussing identity today, and you seem to be a person with a very interesting one. Is there anything like I don't know. You want to anything interesting about yourself that you'd like to tell us?
I guess I'll just give you the basic rundown of, who I am. Um, so, like you said, my name is Natalie. I am an American-born Chinese girl who lives in California, the United States. Um, I am also bisexual. I identify as bisexual, and I am a middle child with two sisters, one older, one younger. So, yeah, that's just me in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming out today. Um, you know, that's cool. I think identities just plays such a huge role in society, and even I guess more, now than ever, we're just starting to. It feels like it. I feel like we're just starting to come out, not come out, but like as a society, just kind of like that might just be me. I don't know. I'm struggling to find my identity, but what do you feel? How do you feel about that? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you said, as a society, we're more comfortable with exploring things, and we don't necessarily feel like we have to be in one box or have to figure out everything right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like as we're going through emotions, as especially in America, in our society, it's just so much easier for us than in maybe like countries that our parents came from or America 50 years ago to just be more accepting of other people, no matter like what race they are, what sexuality they are, what kind of person they identify as. So yeah, it's just a lot easier to be accepting and to explore those things now.
That's cool. Um, I guess I want to start off. You said that you're a middle child. How would you say that's like affected you till now? Because I'll preface this by saying I'm also a middle child, so I kind of understand the older siblings, they get more freedom, and then younger siblings, they get everything handed to them on a silver platter. But how did that work for you, in your household growing up?
I think in my household, I'm only 2 years behind my older sister, and I'm a whole 5 years ahead of my younger sister, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for us, it's quite the gap. So I've definitely identified more with being like the younger sibling, like for a longer time than being the middle sibling. So, like
Yeah.
you said, I definitely get the like older sister gets or older sibling gets like all the freedom, but also she has a lot more of the responsibility than I do, and younger sister kind of gets things like handed to her on a silver platter, because one of the upsides to having two older siblings is that they can kind of show you the ropes, teach you things, but also they get more of the responsibility first. But that's just kind of scratching the surface of it. Of course, being a middle child, there's so much good to it. Like, I kind of have two built-in best friends, I guess, and like we can do whatever we
Yeah.
want together. Yeah, it's never boring with those two in the house. I don't know if I could chalk up a lot of what I'm going to talk about to being a middle child. I think a lot of it relates to just being younger, because yeah, that's made a bit more of an impact on me. But
Okay.
I've never quite felt like I was existing in someone's shadow, which I know a lot of younger siblings could be like, oh, I was always in my older sister's shadow. It never felt like I was in that shadow. It just kind of felt like I was existing. I wasn't making much of my own shadow. So I am very, very similar to my older sister, like in a lot of ways. Anyone you meet will be like, yeah, they're very similar. We talk at the same time. We have the same experiences and the same thoughts. So whenever I kind of sit myself next to her, I always see myself as sort of a less exciting version of her, and like I'm her just with a less big personality. So I think that throughout my childhood and throughout my life, that's kind of taken a bit of a negative toll on how I've seen myself, because like anytime I would get like compliments after someone complimented my older sister, I kind of saw them as like pity comments, you know, and like they were just saying that
Yeah.
because they knew her rather than actually knowing me. I'm gonna talk about a little story. I don't know how long you want this to go, but it might go for a
No,
while.
keep going. This is awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this past year, I was nominated for something called Girls State, which is just like this political summer, like week-long summer camp that all like girls in California get to go to if you get nominated and like you pass this whole thing. When I got nominated, I genuinely could not believe that like a teacher actually knew that I existed. Like, that's such a weird thing to say, but I never thought that I made a presence in a classroom, or that like,
Really?
yeah, like that I had that big of an impact, because I don't raise my hand. I don't really like talk a lot, so like, sure, my grades are fine, but like I don't make that splash in a class like I thought my older sister always did. So when I got nominated, I sort of knew who nominated me, which was a teacher, of course, and I sort of felt like they nominated me because they knew my sister, which I know probably isn't right, but it's those kinds of things where I feel like people are just correlating me to my sister, and that like a lot of my accomplishments could be chalked up to being related to her. So that's a whole thing that I feel like has to do a little bit with being a younger sister. Also in my family, again, more of a being a younger sister rather than a middle sister, but my family is a family that loves to play devil's advocate. So like, whenever I would vent or whenever I would like rant to them as a kid and like as a preteen, I never got much validation for my points or for like what I had to say. Like, they were always like, oh, have you thought of it like this? Or like, oh, but other people think of it like this, which is, from an objective standpoint, that's great, because it's like, yeah, you get to know other people's point of views, and you can realize like, oh, maybe I am overreacting, and like, it's good to get input, that kind of input from people. But from a more subjective standpoint, I never left any of those like venting sessions, I guess you could call them, like happier or like any more satisfied than when I went in, because as I kept doing that and as I kept kind of being pushed down, instead of being like, hey, what you're feeling is valid, what you're saying is valid, and it makes sense, I thought I had nothing valuable to say, and that like I was always irrationally thinking. And throughout time, especially during like my high school years, I kind of had to define for myself what was or wasn't irrational, because I never had anyone tell me that's totally valid. So that coupled with being like like experiences I had in middle school, I became very private, and I was uncomfortable with being vulnerable, which also like probably plays hand in hand with being queer. But that, I feel like it was a very formative part of my life where it just kind of shaped me to be a lot more private. And that's something that really differs from both my older and my younger siblings. They're both very outgoing. They're both very extroverted, and they like always talk about their feelings, and they always talk about that kind of thing. And I've never done that, because I feel like I've had like, it's not their fault, but I've always felt like I wasn't valid for a lot of the things I had to say, and that they didn't offer anything to a conversation or contribute anything. So that's cool. Let's see. I don't know. I feel like it's in middle school. I feel like it was really important for me to listen and like build my own worldview and expand my own knowledge base, like based off what other people thought. And that coupled with being sandwiched between two very loud sisters who sort of were never uncomfortable with like sharing what they thought, I felt like I had no place in talking. So I was always a listener. I was always a listener in middle school too, and I would just kind of absorb what other people thought, to the point where it was kind of like, when is it right for me to say something, or when is it right for me to express my own feelings, and I would never do it, which now that I've grown a lot, I've realized is not right, and there's a good balance between finding, like, seeing your own worth, and that the things that you have to say are rational and that they're important, and they also help other people learn too, but also, like, being able to listen. So, I guess more of...
No, I feel like that's a very important skill or idea to like conquer for yourself. Um, when would you say that you learned this, or that you like kind of like discovered it yourself?
I think I had a lot of it had to do with middle school. I was kind of a miserable, edgy teen, hashtag edgy middle schooler. So, not proud of it, but I did learn a lot throughout that time, especially just being so unhappy with never, never talking or never like feeling like I had worth in any of my friend groups or like even in my own family not having much to say. That I feel like over time and after making friends in high school who actually valued like the things that I said and who actually made me feel like a unique person rather than just like, oh, you're your sister's sister, or oh, you're that sister's sister. And meeting those people really helped me boost up my own confidence, and also that like what I have to say they value, and that they wouldn't tell me like, oh, what I very much value what you're saying, but I could see it and I could tell that they were listening and that they actually cared, and that was a huge boost in knowing that, hey, it's good to say what you feel and to kind of learn to express yourself and find your own self-confidence. So I think both high school and having good friends, and also in middle school learning from that kind of experience and just, finding your own place in the world, that helped a lot.
Interesting. Um, yeah, that's cool. And sorry, is it okay if I ask how old are you?
Oh, I'm 17.
Okay, so you're 17. I would say that, while you do, um, while it seems to me that you've grown a lot, which I have no doubt, spades, even, I do think that you do have a lot of, I don't know, growth or just more to experience. And you seem like the type of person to kind of know that. But I don't know, is there anything that you think that you could work on maybe in the future, maybe in like the next, days, months, years? Anything that you've noticed about yourself?
I definitely think that. So your question is just like, what can I work on myself in the future?
Yeah, I mean that just like, or what do you think that you have, down now, or what do you think that you can, um, I don't know. Well, yeah, basically, how could you work on yourself in the future? Like, what do you think you still have to discover for yourself?
I think I've always been a very like negative thinking person. Like I sort of border the line of negative, pessimistic, and realist. So I really like talking to very like naturally positive people who like see the world in such a different light than I do, who aren't like nihilistic and who don't think of
Right.
everything in like a negative or realistic light. So I think just naturally becoming more positive and just surrounding myself with like positive influences is something I'm really excited to do, really excited to look forward to. I still think that like my confidence in my own like in myself, and I guess in like the way that I talk to people or the way that like I can tackle problems, I think that could use a lot of improving, because especially this year, since a lot of my friends have graduated, I'm an incoming senior. All my friends are seniors last year. They're all graduating, and I've kind of been stuck in this mindset that I'm just going to like go through senior year and just kind of like exist and just kind of float through it. I don't think that's a good mindset. And I think I sort of need to have more confidence in like, hey, you're a friendly person. Like maybe someone will want to be friends with you. So just having that confidence to be like, yeah, I'm worth having friends, and I deserve more than to just like exist without them, I don't know. But I'm excited to see what the senior year holds, even though it's going to be on Zoom because coronavirus. But, who
Yeah.
knows? We might pass notes over Zoom, private chat exists. So, we'll see. I think
Um,
going past just school life and going more into like past college and like career wise, I'm just excited to find something that I like doing and that I look forward to. whenever I picture like the future, I never know like what job I'm gonna be in, or like what city I'm gonna live in, or like, you know, all that kind of stuff. I kind of just leave it open. And I'm just excited to see
Yeah.
like what happens, and just kind of vibe through it. I'm excited for that.
I like that. I like that. If I could kind of circle back a little bit, you mentioned you're going into senior year and how a lot of your friends are graduating or have graduated already. Um, when I went into senior year, that kind of happened with me, but I found that since I was part of the oldest group on campus, I kind of got to be a big brother to other people. I can what is it? I can relate to you. You know, I have an older brother that's 2 years than me, and a lot of his friends were my friends. And I've always kind of felt like just a little bit behind in some aspects, but I also had younger sisters, so uh, I do feel like an older sibling more than a younger sibling. But I don't know, just saying from my experience, being in senior year of high school and being like the oldest people on campus, you know, taking kids under your wing, that's also a fun thing. You get to, I don't know, I got to experience, you know, what it was like to be um, in a position not of authority, but of just like just wisdom of you know, knowing things and being able to teach others. I think that's what kind of pushed me to be a teacher almost. You know, just kind of like doing that. Man, I feel like I just started something and then went in 14 directions at once. But um, yeah, I love that. You know, it's great, and I'm excited for you. And I think you're gonna have an exciting time, and I think that you're gonna grow. Okay, cool,
Thank you, thank
sweet.
you.
You're welcome. Um, oh boy, oh man. Okay, yep. All right. Anyways, you know, back on topic. What besides, you know, that whole like middle child and thing, you mentioned that you were a person of color, you know, Chinese American, and then also that you were bisexual. Do you want to talk to us about that and how that's had like an effect on you growing up?
Which one do you want me to talk about first?
Person of color, second generation immigrant. Let's go. Let's hit it.
All right, let's get it. Okay. So I am Chinese. My mom is from mainland China. She's from Guangdong Canton. And my dad is actually from the Philippines, but he's still connected with his,
Nice.
yeah, it was Chinese roots, and he is Chinese, even if he's from the Philippines. So we have a lot of Chinese culture in our house and that surrounds us. A lot of my mom's side of the family, which is the side that we visit a lot more, they live right in San Francisco, so we visit them all the time. Um, and I loved having her family, like I love having her family so close because we get to experience like all of that kind of culture, and they're all very Cantonese, very loud. They have all the like, all the Cantonese culture, and it's great because not only do I get to experience like the restaurant, like just sitting in the restaurant where you realize that like all that food is so expensive and we're all just chowing down on it, and it's great. I feel like they've instilled really good values in us, very traditional Chinese values of like working hard,
Yeah.
respecting elders, all those kinds of things that I really appreciate and that I notice also in a lot of my other friends who are people of color and who are raised in that like if you work hard, you'll make your own way and you'll, you know, that kind of value. I'm very proud of my culture and my traditions. I don't think I've ever really been like ashamed of it, even like in elementary school. I know for a lot of people of color, sort of expressing their own culture either on like Lunar New Year or just like bringing their own food to lunch, that's sort of been a source of mockery from other, you know, Caucasian kids. But for me, that's never
Right.
happened. I've had very supportive friends who didn't even acknowledge that those were like different things to them. So grateful for that, and I'm grateful that even though they were Caucasian, most of my friends were Caucasian, they were still chill with having someone who's a different culture and having, you know, learning more about it. I feel like since we're gonna go back to my mom's side of the family that lives right in San Francisco, having them live so close, it means that I don't have to put as much of an effort in to learn traditions because they're all there. They're all like teaching us these things just through exposure and through being there and seeing everything. And I feel like that's made it just so much easier for me to be connected to my culture and to be proud of it. Because I see like the decorations in my house, like small things like we have a Buddha statue, even though we're not Buddhist. I don't know. But we have like little decorations that are just like in Chinese, like calendars from banks that you get for free. I don't know, but those are all things I've just been so a part of my life. And that the games we play, the holidays we have, like Lunar New Year, then we have a Mid-Autumn Festival, and we like have all these different traditions. I remember those dates. We go to San Francisco where we celebrate here. Those have all been things I've just been so much of a part of my life, and I'm very happy about that. There is something that I'm not so proud of, and that I've always wanted to kind of change, which is the language barrier. Because I grew up in America, I was born here, and I went to school where they had a form that was like, are you, like, what is your race? And my parents put Chinese, and they put, like, Chinese as my first language, so they took us to phonics class. I don't know if anyone out there remembers phonics class, but where they just, like, taught you how to speak, and all of my sisters went through that. Like, all of us went through that, even though we all spoke, like, perfectly fine, I think. We all went through phonics, and they were all just, like, they kind of automatically assumed that we didn't know how to speak English, which was, like, we didn't mind it. Like, it was just time to be pulled out of, like, elementary school and just talk, which we were totally fine with. But it just kind of solidified in our heads, like, oh, you are American, you speak English, and you don't really speak Chinese. And although we went to Chinese school, like, every Sunday, it's not been that long, every Sunday, and we would learn Chinese, and we would learn, like, how to read and how to write, and our reading and writing is pretty good, but our talking is still not quite there. And I feel like we just never were interested in learning Chinese, which I'm so sad about now, because we would always be like, oh, it's Chinese school, it's Sunday, instead of like, oh, finally I get to like learn these things, and then one day I get to like talk to my grandparents and my family in San Francisco and, you know, just connect a little bit better in that way. But because we never really put in the effort or like cared all that much, we never learned how to speak very well. So
That's kind of sad.
It's really sad. And I like to say that I have the best Chinese of my two sisters, or like of the three of us, which is still not good. It's still not very good Chinese, but it's there. And we can like hold small conversations, I guess. Like we can understand anything. Like our understanding, that's totally fine. We understand our grandparents, we understand our family. We can nod, we can do the whole like, yeah, sure. And like get whatever they ask us to get. It's just like holding that conversation doesn't work so well. And like sometimes our grandma will talk to us and we'll just be like alone with her and she'll be trying to hold a conversation with us, and it just makes me so sad that like we can't really express what we want to say back to her. And that's always been like a source of shame for me, that although we are Chinese and although we are so connected with our culture, we just don't know the language that well. Like we can't speak it back. And there is a tough line that you have to cross when like learning the language from your culture, because now that I'm older, I really want to be better at like speaking Cantonese, speaking Mandarin. But when you're older and you're trying to speak to a bunch of people who are totally fluent and who your mom is very, very fluent, there's this like, oh, you're pronouncing that wrong. Like, oh, your Chinese isn't very good. And it's kind of like, if it's not good, then I don't want to practice, like, to these people. So it's sort of catch-22 there, where you're like, where you want to practice, but when you practice, you get mocked, and then you don't want to practice anymore, but then you'll never get better. So, my older sister and I definitely are trying to get over that barrier, and we're trying to speak more, and every time, like, we get corrected or something, we take that as, like, a learning tool rather than, like, them mocking us. Sometimes they will laugh. Like, that's a fact. Sometimes they'll laugh at the way we pronounce things or our grammar, but then later when we go home, we ask Mom, hey, why were they laughing? And she'll just explain it to us. So we're definitely trying to get over that, and I just want to be able to hold a conversation with my grandma. And yeah. So we're really trying, and I really hope that when I'm like in my 20s, or hopefully before that, that we get good enough to like hold conversations with our family, and that we can teach our children, if we choose to have them, like our language, and so that we can keep passing down these traditions and the nuances that just come with language and with being connected in that way. Yeah, so that's that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Are there any like, I don't know, nuances that come with language that you've noticed between Cantonese and English? You mentioned, wait, it was Cantonese, right?
Yeah, we went to Chinese school
Okay.
for Mandarin, but my Cantonese is better, so like I don't know.
Okay. But yeah, like, do you, what are like some of the key differences in like structure, like of language between the two, you would say?
I think I mentioned that Cantonese people are very loud. So,
Really?
yes, they're very loud. If you hear them talking on the phone, they're just screaming at you, and it's like, okay, okay, we get it. But I think Cantonese is very expressive. We have a lot of expressions that are descriptive, oftentimes mean, but mean in like a loving way. And it's less of a polite language than Mandarin. It's something I like that's less polite. But I really like that there's just so much expression, and that there's so much like, you can tell if someone's like angry or if they're happy or like anything just by the sayings that they use. And these sayings are like long sayings. They're like 8-word sayings, not just like happy, sad. They're like long,
Right.
long idioms. So I really like those. I actually know quite a few of them just because they're said all the time. So I think that, and also just in terms of like language structure, the grammar is of course different. Like what they put first in a sentence is completely different, which is a lot of the time what like makes me a little bit scared to breach talking, is that my grammar will be completely American. Even though I know like the rules, of course, sometimes when you're talking you forget the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. But I just love the language, and I love hearing people talk so so passionately and so loud, and just like, you really feel like you're at home when you hear people speaking Cantonese. So even when I go out to like Chinatown, like I guess as much as you can call it Chinatown in like Sacramento or something, and I just hear Cantonese people, that is definitely like home for me. And growing up in like in a part of in a part of California where there's not very many Chinese people, you don't hear that a lot. You don't hear a lot of like, I guess, your own language being spoken, so you just kind of forget that. Yeah, it just doesn't feel as homey as when you're with people who speak Chinese or who speak Cantonese. So being able to like understand everything, I feel like I'm such a part of it, but then like the second they ask me a question, I either like blank or answer in like sort of broken Chinese, and it just kind of reminds me that there is a disconnect, and that like, as much as I think my Chinese is good, it's still not to the level of like my mom or like any of my other family, like any of the people who live in San Francisco. So just, I guess the difference between Cantonese and English is expressions and like the passion behind the language, and also just like how I feel speaking both. I just feel like it's more of a familiar setting to hear Cantonese rather than English.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Natalie. You just want to move on to the next topic then? Okay. So, yeah, you mentioned earlier that you were bisexual. So I've just a couple questions about that. So I guess the first one is like, when did you discover that for yourself?
Definitely middle school.
Mm-hmm.
They're a long 3 years. Definitely in middle school, which is when not even when I first started exploring. I don't think I ever really explored it. Just kind of like crushes, or just like, those kinds of like passing, like, oh, they're pretty, or like, that kind of thing. That kind of just like snapped it to attention for me, and I was like, oh no, because Chinese.
That was your first reaction?
Yeah. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but it definitely was just like in middle school, I think around 7th to 8th grade was when I even first like entertained the idea rather than like suppressing it. So yeah, there's that. 7th to 8th grade.
Did you have like a wake up, or like when did you know for real? Or was there like any given like actress or
No, I
I
actually
don't
don't
know.
have a lot of crushes. I think the only crushes I've ever had from like people on TV were like animated characters. So
Really?
yes, I've never been like, oh, Brad Pitt, yes, but but it was definitely an in-person crush. The
Oh,
first time
okay.
that I was really like, oh my god, was my first crush ever. Period. It was a girl, of course, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, that was the first time.
Wow. Okay. And then little middle school Natalie, she didn't know what to do, or, um, I mean, I guess that was, a couple years before Pride became a thing, or not became a thing, but like Pride became like all over the media and stuff. So, yeah. Okay. How did you deal with it back then?
I had my friend group at that time. While they weren't the like the nicest people, they were all relatively like open-minded and also like exploring for themselves. So I think all of them are part of the LGBTQ plus community, which was
Uh-huh.
insane for a middle school in yeah, like for a middle school. But I think I just surrounded myself with people who were LGBTQ plus, both because like I needed to like feel a little bit more quote unquote normal, but also because like I guess I admired them for being able to explore that for themselves. I also had
That's
one best
awesome.
friend who we're still best friends to this day. The other people in middle school, I don't think I've talked to them in a long time. But one of my best friends is a very vocal activist for like LGBTQ plus rights, along with a bunch of other human rights. So her mom was like is still super like accepting of these things, and whenever we would hang out, it was like no rules, man, and it just felt so good to be around her. It still does. So I think she was
Mm,
also a big part of that.
that's really cool. And then, I mean, you kind of had like an aversion to like your Chinese, roots when you talked about that earlier. What can you touch on that a little bit?
What do you mean aversion to Chinese roots?
Or like, I don't know, like, is that like a what?
Oh, I think I know what you mean. I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, like what was your family's reaction, or stuff like that? What is that? What's it typically like?
So I don't know if you've heard this term out there. I know a lot of the queer folks out there who may be listening to this. They've heard of the term internalized homophobia, or like internalized oppression,
Uh-huh.
where they take the ideals from like the society around them or their family, and they kind of like press it onto themselves versus like to other people you would never like encourage this kind of thinking, or like you would never be homophobic towards anyone else, but towards yourself you hold a different standard for it. I don't know, but
Right.
yeah, growing up in the family that I've grown up in, very Chinese, very traditional in that sense. It's definitely tough because then one day you have to imagine like coming out to that, and it's like, ugh. But as I mentioned, I am bi, and when you're bi, there's this kind of stigma that like you're not gay enough, but you're not straight enough. So like if you're dating a guy, you're straight. Like you're totally straight, and your identity as a bi person is not valid anymore, which is completely false. But when you're,
Right.
yeah, and then when you're dating a girl or someone of the same gender, it's like you're not like you're not accepted by the
Straight enough.
straight people either, and it's just like you have to find. I don't know. It's hard. It's very hard for bi people to sort of like find their place, because then they think like, oh, maybe I am straight. Oh, maybe I am gay, and it's just kind of like this flip flop because no one apparently accepts the label like, oh, you're bi. When you hear the word bi, it's sort of like, oh, you're just like you're just sure you are, okay, and that's totally not it. I
Yeah.
think I'm a person who likes to just like think about my future a lot, just like randomly. But when I think of dating someone or like being with someone of the same gender, it's just so unfair towards that other person because in my head, I just want so desperately to be straight passing. Because when, like, you can't, like, it's not always accepting in wherever you live or whatever familial positions you're in. So,
Right.
I feel like if I were to ever be with someone of the same gender, it'd just be so unfair to them because I feel like I couldn't give them the same affection and the same like affectionate gestures that like couples get to go through and like the things that they deserve. Like they deserve to like meet the parents or to like feel like they're a part of the family. And I feel like if I were to date a guy that's like totally cool, of course you can like go meet the parents, you can eventually get married if that's what you wanted to do. But I felt like in my head I could never do that with like someone of the same gender. I could never be like, oh yeah, this is my girlfriend, just casually. And while that might not be true for the rest of my life, and I hope it isn't, I feel like as of now, it's such an unfair thing to have to deal with. And like, it's also unfair to the guys, at least in my position, because you think, do I actually have a crush on them, or am I just trying to like overcompensate for the fact that I like girls and I just really want to be straight passing, so I want to date this guy? Or do you actually like them? And it's just such a tough, it puts all of your relationships as a bi person or all your crushes into this sort of like twisted light of like, do I actually like them? Or like, am I trying too hard to like them? And, ugh. So, yeah, that's a heavy thing to unpack, I guess.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing this with us. It's really cool. It's really cool. What are, I don't know. I guess I don't have any questions for you right now. Do you have any questions for me? This has been mostly like you talking, so, but I love that. But, yeah, it's been good so far. How long have we been talking actually? Let me check that. I've been recording for 37 minutes.
Yeah.
Boy. Are there any other topics that you want to explore or of that nature?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I kind of want to keep talking about like being queer just cuz like I don't know, I never have like I don't really talk about these things because, as I said before, I'm like a very private person. So like,
Yeah.
I don't normally get like a limelight or like someone to talk to about these kinds of things. So I just think it'd be cool if I could keep talking about that, if that's okay with you.
Oh, please. 100%. Keep talking. What do you want to talk about next?
Probably just like growing up queer.
Okay.
Yeah, what that's like. Just a disclaimer. I'm only speaking about like my experiences, and like everyone's journey is different. So I'm not encompassing all like bi people or all like pan poly people. And like, there's nothing wrong with not wanting to come out or like not wanting to have labels if it's not safe. But I stand by for like some like certain societies or like in certain places that you grow up, especially if it's not very accepting. Growing up queer is sort of a trauma in itself.
Yeah.
You learn to be very private with a whole part of yourself, and I don't know, that like I said earlier, that's sort of what lends itself to my being so private. There are certain parts of yourself that you just have to completely hide from people, and you don't want it to seep into other parts of your personality. So even if it was like something a totally hetero person would say, you don't want to say it because then it's like that puts you in an awkward spot, and then like you feel like you've revealed yourself to everyone. There are certain jokes that even like I make today, like not like bad jokes, but jokes that are like, haha, do you listen to Girl in Red, or haha, do you listen to Cave Town? It's just like jokes that are like part of the LGBTQ plus community and like the queer community that like you see on your Instagram For You page, or that like they're just jokes that you get, and that they're jokes that you feel comfortable making in a more anonymous situation like online or whatever, but you would never say in person. And this is from someone who's like not very out to like family, of course. So, you know, as I come out, I hope like I can make more of these jokes. But when you make these jokes, especially in a very like hetero household, and then like you're met with just like a blank stare or just like a what, or like, you know, something like
Right.
that. It's kind of just like making aware that you have a disconnect from straight people. And when you're surrounded like on the internet and like in your own friend groups and stuff by like such accepting people and such like a group of a queer community, you kind of forget that like, oh, I guess I am quote unquote different. And like it's not a good feeling to just sort of be like made aware of that disconnect. And even like the smallest comments, like if you had a spam or a finsta, like, and then you make like certain like not quite jokes, but like certain comments or like certain rants about your like identity as a queer person. It's just small comments from other people, like family or like friends who either didn't know that you were queer or who like just don't know. It's not their fault that they don't know certain things and that they like make small ignorant comments here and there. But those kinds of comments, especially for a person who's not very out, kind of make you want to close back up again. And so like, I don't know. And when people that you know are very straight and who like are very close to you, even if they have like no ill intent or anything, like just confusion and being met with like a huh rather than a like, oh, what do you mean by that? Like, I don't know, being met with those kinds of comments, it just makes you sort of overreact a little bit. It makes me overreact a little bit. I guess I'll give like sort of an anecdote. I don't know, but I made the like, does she listen to Girl in Red joke to my sisters because they're chill and I'm pretty sure they know. Like, I'm 100% they know. But sometimes I'll just be met with like a what, and it just doesn't feel great. So like as you grow up, it takes, for a lot of queer people out there, it takes a lot of time to sort of depart from being very closed off and for being comfortable in making those jokes and understanding that like not every comment that a straight person makes is like an attack on you or an attack on your identity, and you don't have to be so scared of that anymore. So can't wait till I can sort of depart from the nest and I can sort of explore these kinds of things on my own without being so scared of like, oh, are they overhearing this conversation, or like, oh, they're gonna take it the wrong way, or like they don't understand. So yeah. Sure, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing again. This is good. This is very good.
It's very long. I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to cut so much if you want this to be 20 minutes.
No, I don't mind having it be longer than regular. That's fine. Yeah. I'll be sure to cut out, some stuff, especially like some of my rants that went way too far, but I do like listening to you talk about this. This is very, very good. I'll admit, I mean, I'm probably going to cut this out, but I did not know that you were bisexual before like 43 minutes ago. I'll say that outright. But that's awesome. I'm so proud of you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's neat. I don't know. That being said, we are 43 minutes in. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Is there anything that interests you? Or like, I was thinking of Mulan the other day. That was a great movie.
You watched what?
I was just thinking about it. I haven't seen it in a while, but Mulan.
Oh, Mulan.
The one about the girl who pretends to be a guy and who's also a military genius and saves all of China.
Yep.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're also Chinese, but do you resonate with that film? Do you feel like that like speaks to you a bit?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't know, when you watch so much TV that's just like all so Caucasian and so like, just like so, I guess, quote unquote, American for like the TV that you watch, seeing princesses and like seeing characters on screen who identify with you, so, or like just someone who's not Caucasian. Like, my personal favorite princess is Tiana, and I don't know.
Yeah, she's awesome.
I just love the princesses of color, and that like that they show that Disney is, or like that studios are no longer afraid to be like, hey, we have a princess who is Chinese. We have a princess who is from Louisiana and is African American. So I love Mulan. And it's a story that I actually like I studied in Chinese school, and like that I learned, and like I had to memorize the poem for a class. So like I just love watching that and being like, hey, I know that piece of history, or like, you know, just like, oh, that kind of makeup I have seen in real life before, and like that hairpin,
Right.
I understand that hairpin and like the significance of it. So yeah, I love Mulan, and I love that like certain things like her last name means like flower, and then her fake name that she goes with means vase. So just like
Right.
those, yeah. So like her name is Fa Mulan. Fa means flower, and then Ping means vase. So like
That's awesome.
yeah, just those like small things. You're like, oh, I get that, and it just makes you happy. So like representation is just so. It's like people have politicized it so much, and I feel like the news is always like, oh, they just have this person for like diversity, but like you don't like sometimes you just don't understand how important that representation is and how happy it makes people. Like I dressed up
Yeah.
as Mulan for Halloween, like of course, and it just makes you happy to see those kinds of representation on TV or like just in your life. Which is why I think things like Black History Month or like Asian Pacific Islander Month, and like even things like Pride and stuff, those are just such good times to really be like proud of who you are and of your culture, especially when you grow up not seeing so much of it. And yeah. I don't know. I love it. I love it. I love Mulan.
Me too, Natalie. Me too. Ah, cool. Okay, so then I guess going forward, what do you think is like we're doing as a society? We're doing right, we're doing wrong. Like, what do you think is the next step, if you will, as we progress forward in time?
What I know we're doing right now is supporting the movement that Black Lives Matter, because of course they do. I love to see it. I love to see people on my Instagram feed like being passionate about these things, even if they're Caucasian, and for them to like finally be taking a stand, even though like maybe before this they had no idea like what systemic racism was or what all these things are, what the like school to prison pipeline is, and like all these things, and they're finally learning about it. And it's just like, yeah, this has been a fight that's been going on for so long, and like finally we're
Yeah.
doing something right and people aren't backing down. And it's like, yeah, you think that some of these outdated systems and just like systemic racism in itself, maybe it should have ended a long time ago, or maybe you should at least acknowledge that like it exists. And I'm so happy that's like an overwhelming amount of people that I know personally or that I know online, and the influence that I'm just seeing like around California and around the world is really happening, and that they're really not backing down this time. They're really working to make change and to call like actual politicians to do their job and like address the problems. So I think we're doing that right. And I attended a protest once. I wish I could go to more, but my parents aren't super thrilled about, you know, protests and like activism and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So both my sister and I have been to protests, and they are great. It's just so inspiring also just listening to like Black stories and to hear like other people's experiences both relate to them and also like inspire yourself to keep supporting these, keep signing petitions. I make an effort to sign at least one petition a day, a lot of times more, especially if I see something that's like a whole flood of petitions. I'll be like, all right, going for it. So I can't vote yet since I'm only 17, but when voting time comes around, you sure know that I'm going to be telling all my friends who already know this, but like, you know, to vote for the right people, vote for the right, we're not going to go into our presidential candidates, but vote for the right, like, senators and for the right, you know, I don't know, all that. So, yeah, I think we're doing that right. And I think that our country really just needs to get it together and, like, you know, or I guess we're not going to go into that, but they really need to get it together and address the issues that are the human rights issues that are happening and make policies to help change that. But another thing I think
I agree with you.
I guess another thing that I don't think we're quite doing right is how we're addressing the coronavirus. I guess even on a very local level, I just see so many people, especially since like schools are going to be online for at least the start and who knows for how long, that they're all like, oh, we want to go to school again, but then they'll turn around and like go and have a basketball tournament with all their friends. So it's like, even on a local level, we're not, like, a lot of us aren't taking this very seriously, and it's not great. Not thrilled about that, because I don't think we can go and say, like, oh, I wish everyone would just, like, get their ish together, but then not get our own ish together. So, I don't know, that's just on a local level, and then on the government level in California, Governor Newsom, I don't know what he's doing. But he's like, yeah, schools are open. Just kidding, schools are closed. Oh, you can go to work. No, you can't. And it's just like, okay. But it's all a learning curve. No one saw this pandemic coming. No one has any experience with dealing with a pandemic. So I understand that there's a learning curve. But, like, I don't know. I think not going back to school, at least for me and for our high school, is a good call, because I don't want to get anyone sick, or, like, I don't want anyone to get sick. So as much as we're upset about losing our senior year and like all the senior activities that come with it, I think it's a good call. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, I suppose. Cool. Well, we are nearing up on 52 minutes, so
sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry, but I do want to wrap things up. Natalie Yang, the very awesome guest, do you have any socials or anything you want us to follow you on? Maybe like a DeviantArt account, or what's that one for fanfics? Do you do stuff? I don't know. Is there anything you want to plug right now while you can?
Sure. Follow me on Instagram, v.amazing.natalie. Follow me on Snapchat, which is just amazing.natalie. Add me on Remind. Just kidding. Just hit me up, whatever. Follow my Instagram, get me to 1,000 followers. And besides that, I'm good. No need to plug.
Okay. Well, you've heard it here first. Thank you again, Natalie Yang, for coming on the show. This has been wonderful. And I'm so happy and proud of you. And, I love talking with you. You're very well-spoken, for being 17. And I hope we can have you again soon. All right, then. I'm just going to call it.
All right, bye-bye.